Hello there, I'm the biblical translator, and today's meal is about uncertainty and how the ground moves from beneath our feet sometimes. And it's based on a dream I had early this morning. I had a dream. I found myself getting off a bus because it was taking me to the wrong direction. I remember looking around me and all I could see was what looked like a vast desert. And then as I walked, it slowly started looking like deep snow. It wasn't difficult to walk through though. It was almost as though what I could see wasn't what my body was experiencing. Isn't life like that sometimes? A verse from the Bible came to mind. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee and with mine eye. That's Psalm 32:8. Have you ever found yourself in a season where you knew you couldn't stay where you were, but you had no idea where you were going? We often think uncertainty is something to be feared, but perhaps uncertainty isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's simply the space between one chapter closing and another beginning. There are moments when everything around us looks unfamiliar and challenging. We look at our finances, our health, our family, our age, our future, and we tell ourselves, this is going to be hard. Yet somehow, one day follows another. We get up, we make a cup of tea, we go to work, we answer the phone, we laugh at something silly. We keep putting one foot in front of the other. Looking back, we realise we've travelled much further than we ever imagined. What struck me most about the dream wasn't where I was going, it was that I kept walking without knowing where I was going. I wasn't rushing, I wasn't struggling with the elements beneath my feet. I wasn't trying to force an answer, I simply kept moving, aware of my surroundings. Perhaps that's where many of us are today. We may not know exactly what comes next. We may have left something behind because we knew it was no longer right for us. But we haven't yet arrived at whatever comes after. Society tells us we should have a 5-year plan. Life doesn't always work like that. Sometimes all we have is enough light to take us to the next step. Another thing stayed with me from the dream. Along the way, there were little alcoves filled with warmth and light. People were sitting, getting on with life, cooking, talking, children making noise. Nothing spectacular, just ordinary moments of life carrying on. But I heard someone say, this is the heavenly realm. But it reminded me how often we overlook the small places of comfort because we're so busy searching for the final destination. We think peace will arrive when we finally get there, wherever there happens to be. Yet perhaps peace visits us in passing, in ordinary conversations, in a neighbour's smile, in a shared meal, in a favourite song on the radio, in someone remembering our name. But there was one detail I found puzzling. The ground looked like heavy snow, but it didn't feel cold. It never slowed me down. What I saw with my eyes wasn't what I felt with my feet. I wonder how often we allow experiences to frighten us before we've even taken the first step. We imagine the journey will be impossible, only to discover that the thing we feared never had the power we gave it. Maybe that is one of life's lessons. Not everything that looks difficult will defeat you. Not everything that feels uncertain is leading you astray. And not every road without signposts is the wrong road. How many of you have been on the motorway and there are sudden signs that there are diversions? You are taken down familiar routes and streets you have never been before. We become desperate to know exactly where we're going. We want a map, a timetable, a guarantee that we will end up where we are meant to. Yet life rarely hands us the whole journey. More often than not, it simply gives us enough light for the next few steps. A few more diversion signs in the form of arrows. Perhaps that's because if we could see the whole road and we were familiar with the route, we'd spend our time racing towards the destination instead of noticing the miracles on the way, like nature or kindness. A neighbour who checks in, a stranger who holds the door open, A grandchild who says something wonderfully honest that you laugh all afternoon. A favourite song coming from the radio at exactly the right moment. A hot cup of ginger tea after one of those days when you've spoken to everyone except yourself. These little moments don't remove the journey. They remind us that we aren't walking alone. God has the steering wheel. So perhaps the next time life changes the ground beneath your feet, don't be too quick to decide what sort of journey lies ahead. The ground can change without giving way. A new season can feel unfamiliar without being frightening. And what looks impossible from a distance sometimes feels surprisingly manageable once we take the first step. If the ground beneath your feet has changed recently, don't let appearances write the ending to a story that has only just begun. You don't need all the answers before you take the next step. You don't need to see the whole road before you begin walking. Today's strength is enough for today's journey. And tomorrow's strength will be waiting when tomorrow comes. As the old hymn reminds us, one day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking of you. And perhaps that's one of the life's quietest miracles. We don't have to carry tomorrow until tomorrow arrives and becomes today. We often fear that when the ground changes, we will fall. But sometimes we discover we were learning how to walk on a different kind of ground all along. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply keep walking with the light we've been given today, instead of demanding to see the whole journey before we take another step. Sometimes the path only becomes clear because we were willing to keep walking and trusting. And perhaps that's enough for today. The word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. That's Psalm 119, verse 105. I would like to share one final thought as to why my dream eventually became food for the heart. The dream was never the meal. The dream was the kitchen. The ingredients were already there. When life takes us somewhere we didn't expect. When the ground beneath us changes. When what looks impossible turns out to be something we can walk through. When we don't have the whole map, but we have enough light for the next step. Let me leave you with this verse. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Psalm 32:8. I said it before. When the path ahead looks empty and unfamiliar, remember that guidance does not always come as a map. Sometimes it comes as enough light to take the next step. I hope you enjoyed that meal for your heart. Sometimes when things are uncertain, we do tend to get nervous, we do tend to get anxious, we tend to kind of mitigate against it and have all these kind of thoughts and plans and things that you just you cannot possibly know what's around the corner. And then we get frustrated and we wonder why, we're supposed to, I think culture tells us that we're supposed to plan ahead, but sometimes we cannot plan ahead. We can only take one day at a time. And as I got off of that bus in my dream and I looked around, it was strange because I didn't feel intimidated by the environment. I didn't feel intimidated by the car. In fact, the car that was following me, when I at first thought it was because I felt vulnerable, was actually showing me where people were. It was actually telling me that in this vast expanse, I was not alone. It was actually directing me towards the light, to those little alcoves where there were people living normal lives. And even though I was just cruising through, taking one step at a time, not even knowing where I ended up because I woke up out of my dream with a terrible headache, it still gave me a story that, Myrna, just trust the process. Trust the process. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Enjoy your meal.